Ladies and gents, welcome back to the Infinite Podcast, where today we're diving into the shadowy world of eclipse superstitions among ancient cultures. So, Simon, did you know the Vikings thought eclipses were a result of giant wolves chasing the sun and moon? Imagine that chaos at IKEA.
Oh, man, those Vikings were onto something. I mean, if you saw the sun getting gobbled up by a massive wolf, you'd probably skip the meatballs and flat pack furniture, right? Right? But hey, in China, they thought it was a dragon munching on the celestial bodies. Everyone's out there blaming their favorite beast for snacking on the sky.
Absolutely, Simon. And it wasn't just about blaming mythical creatures. These stories reflect deep cultural beliefs. Like the Chinese, they'd bang pots and pans to scare the dragon away during an eclipse. They believed harmony in the heavens meant stability on Earth, so eclipses were bad omens for the emperor. That's centuries of astronomy tied to their political system. Different cultures, same celestial event, but wildly diverse interpretations and actions taken. Pretty fascinating stuff.
Stability, huh? Banging pots and pans to scare a sky dragon makes my neighbor's method of scaring away raccoons seem kinda genius now. Hey, Larry, give it a rest with the clanging. You'll throw off our government.
Ha, right? Next time I'm hearing a racket, I'll just assume someone's trying to save the world from celestial beasts. Just imagine back then, whole empires could have risen or fallen because somebody thought the sun getting eaten was a sign to go to war or make peace. They took that stuff seriously. No daily horoscope app needed, just old-fashioned cosmic drama shaping history.
Well, seriously? I don't buy it being that straightforward. I mean, sure, eclipses were like the ultimate spoilers for what's to come, if you believe in that stuff, but I kind of feel for the leaders back then. Imagine trying to run an empire, and some stargazer says, uh-oh, moon's got a bite taken out of it, better not invade France. Must have been like flipping a coin. History, man. It's weird.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but let's not forget that these leaders used superstitions to their advantage too. Like the Mayans were serious astronomers, and they could predict eclipses. That knowledge was power, man. Imagine being a Mayan king, knowing an eclipse is coming and telling your enemies or even your own people, hey, if you don't follow me, the sky will darken. They'd think you had divine powers. So yeah, flip of a coin? Maybe, but sometimes those coins were loaded.
Whoa, wait, so let me get this straight. A Mayan king could basically boast about darkening the skies because he knew when an eclipse was hitting? Dude, that's like having cheat codes to life back then. Bow before me or I'll erase the sun. Huh, power moves by the Mayans. That's kind of epic and sneaky. I like their style, sort of a cosmic flex.
Yeah, you're spot on there, Simon. And it's not just about power plays or flexing. These eclipse predictions let the big shots influence critical decisions, like they'd plan wars or peace treaties around them. Kings became legends by predicting the skies, had folks thinking they were linked to the gods, you know? So it's strategic, like chess with celestial bodies. Plus, those leaders could have swayed public opinion or kept their grip on power during such ominous times. It's wild how a natural event like an eclipse could be such a game changer in ancient politics and culture, really.
Man, you're telling me a king could just schedule an apocalypse for Tuesday because he knew a solar smackdown was due? That's like claiming you made it rain because you washed your chariot. These ancient rulers were working the old mystical weatherman angle, cloudy with a chance of eternal darkness unless you pay respect. I bet their 5-day forecasts were insane.
Ha, Simon, that's bonkers, man. These ancient leaders were like the OG UFC fighters of mind games, controlling the narrative. Like a king pulling a solar eclipse card from his sleeve and shouting, see this? Bow down or I'm turning off the sun. It's all in the timing, like landing the perfect head kick when your opponent least expects it. Just heavyweight champions of the psychological warfare game, straight up.
Um, I'd say though, not every ruler was throwing around eclipse threats like candy. I mean, take the Egyptians. They were sun worshippers, right? So an eclipse was a major no-no for their sun god Ra. But instead of fear-mongering, some pharaohs probably used eclipses as a call to worship harder. Beat the evil engulfing Ra. Less about control and more about rallying the people in unity. I just think it paints this too a convenient picture if we say all these rulers were Machiavellian masterminds playing the eclipse card. Some might have just been trying to keep their cities from freaking out when the big light bulb in the sky went out.
That's a pretty solid point, Simon. Like, not every ruler was out there using eclipses as their doom gloom prophecy card. And the Egyptians, yeah, they worshipped Ra big time, like he was the A-lister of their pantheon. So during an eclipse, it wasn't about ruling with an iron fist. It was more about unity and keeping calm. That's wild, man. They sort of flipped the script, using what could have been seen as a bad omen to actually bring people together. That's kind of heartwarming if you think about it. A whole culture coming together to support their sun god. Way different from the whole fear angle, right?
Heartwarming? I don't know, Joe. Maybe it's more about keeping the peace than actual warmth and fuzzies. Think about it. Society starts losing its collective mind because old Ra took a lunch break, and your pharaoh sitting pretty in your big gold chair. You've got to be like, folks, chill. Let's just all pray or something. It's practical. Worry less about the sky falling and more about harvesting those grain piles before, the locust rave kicks off.
So you're telling me that the Egyptians, they had like this whole system where they actually didn't freak out but came together because of Ra? That's actually kind of brilliant. Keeping it cool rather than causing chaos. That's some 4D chess right there. It's all about perspective, huh? Keep everyone focused on praying and away from panic. Makes sense. Keep things stable by keeping people busy with worship. No mass hysteria, just a lot of intense sun hymns, I guess. Wild how different cultures had their own unique take on the same cosmic event.
Exactly, Joe. It's like when a thunderstorm hits and we have those blackout parties, right? Everyone just chills instead of freaking out. Ancient mystery sky events, modern power outages, same vibe, different centuries.
You hit the nail on the head, Simon. It's like rolling with the punches, finding a way to turn the unexpected into something cool. Ancient blackout fiesta. It's about making the best of whatever comes your way, ancient or modern.
Well, if we're diving deeper into eclipse superstitions, it's not just about keeping calm or a power play. See, it's also crucial for timekeeping and agriculture. These events were big old cosmic clocks helping to set calendars. Cultures were timing festivals and crop stuff around them, like a farmer's almanac on steroids. So eclipses weren't just mystical, they were super practical too. Like without them, Joe, ancient peeps might have been planting potatoes when it was time for turnips.
Yeah, you're not wrong about eclipses being practical for those back in the day farmers, Simon. But let's not get it twisted. The superstitions around them were still massive. I mean, sure, they had a part in the nitty-gritty of agriculture, but think about how those superstitions started. Like, no one just wakes up and says, I bet the moon blocking the sun means it's potato planting season. They saw darkness at noon and freaked out before they figured out the patterns. It's like ancient trial and error with a side of cosmic panic, man.
Joe, I gotta push back on that. It's not just throwing darts at a calendar. These superstitions, they're rooted in something real, right? You can't ignore that ancient folks were sharp. They observed the skies way before our techie gadgets came along. Maybe they spooked themselves at first, sure, but that fear kickstarted their curiosity. They sussed out patterns over time because survival hinged on figuring out when to plant those spuds or dance around bonfires. So I don't know, man, panic's one thing, but give them credit for flipping it into some hardcore starry learning sessions.
Sure, Simon. So they probably started off all spooked, right? But that fear morphed into learning. Gotta give props where they're due. It's this mix, a bit of superstition, a dash of observation, that shaped their culture and survival tactics. They were the OG astronomers long before telescopes, setting the stage for our understanding today. Makes you wonder what other bits of ancient wisdom we've built upon without even knowing, doesn't it?
Oh, speaking of night sky spectacles, Joe, there's this eerily cool cousin to the eclipse, the blood moon. That whole reddish deal that freaks out entire civilizations. It's like they knew marketing before it was a thing. Red equals danger. So a red moon has got to mean super danger, right? Man, from biblical prophecies to vampire novels, that crimson disco ball in the sky is like the ultimate omen. I mean, unless it's signaling a sale on tomatoes or something, people tend to take these things way seriously.
I remember this one time back in college, right? We had this huge astronomy project, and coincidentally, there was a blood moon that semester. The whole campus basically turned into an impromptu festival. Everyone's outside with their blankets and telescopes, all hyped for the show. And even the profs are out there explaining the science and all. But there's this one guy, let's call him Dave. Dave is spouting off about end times and old prophecies whenever someone would listen. And I'm just thinking, here we are trying to have a good time, and dude's dead set on preaching doom. But then it strikes me, like maybe folks latch onto these prophecies because they're searching for meaning or some control in chaos, you know? So while Dave's doing his prophecy hotline spiel, most of us are just lost in the moment, savoring the rarity of this red spectacle above. It's wild how one event can bring out such different vibes in people. And funny enough, instead of panic, that blood moon kind of united everyone, whether you were there for science or stories. Different takes, same sky theater. Kind of cool, really.
What if these blood moons are like cosmic Rorschach tests, right? You see doom or wonder, and it's all about what's brewing in your brain pan. Dave sees Armageddon, but I'm over here thinking maybe it's the universe's way of tossing us a free ticket to the most epic suspense flick ever. No popcorn required.
Ha, that's a wild way to put it, Simon. Blood moons like the universe's own psychological ink blots. Everybody's seeing something different up there. It really plays into our deep-seated fears or awe, right? But in the end, man, it's just us trying to make sense of cosmic events with our little human brains. We've all got this primal wiring that says, yo, red sky at night, sailor's delight, or maybe fright. Depends on the sailor, I guess.
Yeah, but hold up a sec. If we're talking about blood moons in stories and how they play tricks with our heads, isn't it bizarre that we don't just write them off as a neat trick of the light? Instead, people slap on this doomsday sticker. Come on, does every cool lunar paint job gotta be a bad omen? What if literature got it all twisted, spinning these blood moon tales? Because deep down, we all love a bit of drama. I mean, without the prophecy angle, it's just a moon with a fancy filter, right?
Oh man, Simon, you're tossing out some mind benders here. Like if we strip away the prophecy stuff from blood moons, yeah, it's just Earth casting a shadow with some cool light physics making it look red. But literature and prophecies, they tap into our love for a good story, don't they? People eat up those dramatic plots like moths to a flame, even if it's concocted drama. Maybe it's because real life can be kind of mundane sometimes, right? So when there's a chance to spice things up with some literary doomsday flair, folks jump on it, make it way more than maybe it should be. It's like every time the moon goes all rouge on us, it's not enough to just appreciate this stellar show we're getting courtesy of nature. No, it's got to mean something big and wild. Goes to show, we humans have a knack for loving a bit of added intensity to the mix, even if it's just the universe slapping on that fancy filter.
You've got me thinking, Joe. It's like every time there's a blood moon, my feed explodes with folks going all doomsday. And I'm just sitting there munching on my cereal, looking out the window and thinking, oh, hey, that's neat. But then, you dive into those old books or click on some history channel, and bam, suddenly it's not just a lunar event. It's a headline straight out of a prophecy-themed tabloid. These red moons, they're like nature's blockbusters, hitting some primal button in our heads. Literature? Man, it eats this stuff up because let's face it, who doesn't want their everyday life to feel epic once in a while? Real life doesn't always have that zing or excitement, so when the sky pulls a stunt, we're all over it like ants on a dropped lollipop. Just shows you how much we crave a sprinkle of extraordinary, huh?
Yeah, like that primal button you mentioned, it's legit. Our ancestors had these sky signs as their special effects before movies were a thing, right? So literature scoops that up, uses blood moons as page turners because we're hardwired to notice red as a sign of, well, something big. Think about it. There's this whole psychology behind color. Red signals alert, passion, emergency, anything intense. And then it hits our skies. That's free story material falling into an author's lap. Take historical events that happened around blood moons. They get linked, like in some prophecy bingo. If something bad went down near a blood moon night, people would be like, "Aha! Told ya!" It cements the blood moon rep as an omen, making future ones even more hair-raising or thrilling. And here's the catch, it sparks self-fulfilling prophecies, right? The more we hype it up, the more on edge we are when the next one comes around. Then any little weird thing that happens gets logged as blood moon shenanigans, fueling that fire for the next cycle. So yeah, Simon, it's not just stories being dramatic for kicks. These tales hammer in those deep-seated connections between color, emotion, and expectation, and boom, Average Tuesday turns into popcorn-worthy spectacle.
You know, Joe, if life's a movie and blood moons are popping up, I say grab the popcorn. Who knows? Maybe your grumpy neighbor suddenly starts howling. Best sideshow ever.
Oh, Simon, imagine a medieval dude seeing his first eclipse and thinking the sun's just got eaten up. He grabs his chicken, runs around like, brace yourselves, the eternal night cometh. Total mayhem over a natural rerun.
So there's this guy, right? The village's very own chicken whisperer. He's chillin', having a chat with his feathery friends when the sky starts getting shady. Suddenly he's all like, "Listen up, chickens! Armageddon's knocking!" They start clucking in panic, laying eggs like it's going out of style. So he throws on his end is nigh sandwich board and parades down Main Street screaming, "The sun's been swallowed. Repent or embrace the forever night." Meanwhile, the local wizard, out for his afternoon potion stroll, face palms so hard, it's just an eclipse, man. But you know, chicken guys out there convincing half the town to start confessing and trading their gold for magic beans, because sure, that's how you ward off the darkness. I tell you, Joe, if there were history blooper reels, this dude and his apocalypse chickens would win an Oscar.
Yeah, and the thing is, this chicken guy, he's not just spreading chaos, but sparking like a comedy of errors, you know? Villagers start doing the most absurd stuff, thinking it'll save the day. Like the baker starts baking sun cakes to win back the sunlight. And there's even a story where people tried to scare the dark away, literally yelling at the sky. It's hilarious, because we know an eclipse isn't like a celestial beast they can shoo off. These cosmic confusions lead to some golden moments where logic takes a holiday and superstition throws a wild party instead. In modern times, we jest. But I gotta say, people getting creative with their panic kind of makes history lessons a lot more entertaining, right?
Oh, for sure. There's this one gem from history during the Halley's Comet Pass in 1910. Folks heard that the comet's tail had poisonous gas, and wouldn't you know it, their brains hit the jackpot. People started buying comet pills to fight the toxic fumes. Businesses made bank on anti-comet umbrellas and gas masks, and there were parties with folks guzzling down end-of-the-world booze. Might as well go out with a bang. Then there was the Great Disappointment in 1844, where thousands thought a comet signaled Jesus returning. When he was a no-show, there must have been some awkward Monday morning conversations like, so about those apocalyptic declarations I made. For all the space buffs out there, we can't leave off the classic. During solar eclipses, people in many cultures would get loud, banging pots, howling, making whatever ruckus they could to scare away whatever wolf, frog, or dragon they imagined had taken a bite of the sun. Those are just some historic misadventures due to our celestial neighbors throwing us a curveball. Just goes to show, when things go dark or strangely lit up, human creativity kicks into surreal gear.
Seriously, history's got more sequels to the confused human reactions than a blockbuster franchise. And what's wild, every time there's an event happening again, like that 2012 Mayan calendar thing, new chaos ensues, and it's like we never learn. Just adds fuel to the roast we call human hilarity and cosmic misunderstandings.
2012, man. Remember when folks stocked up on canned beans like they were magical anti-apocalypse nuggets? It's like our brains just see a cosmic event sticker and think, better safe than sorry, gotta protect my toilet paper fortress. It's the Mayans pranking us from the past, Joe, galactic level trolling.
So this reminds me of a time when I was at this New Year's party, right? It's Y2K, and there's this air of, you know, uncertainty because everyone's been hyping up the potential digital doomsday. So, like, we're counting down, glasses ready for clinking, but also a bit on edge, kind of expecting computers to launch us back to the Stone Age or something. And what happens next is pure comedy gold because there's this one guy, I swear, he's got his entire living room wrapped in aluminum foil to ward off the Y2K bugs. And he's not alone. Others are seriously discussing backup plans for when society collapses. Then midnight hits, and look at that. Lights stay on, the DJ booth doesn't explode into sparks, and well, my friend's foil fortress just becomes a shiny conversation piece. The next day, it's all laughs and face palms as we ring in the new century with nothing more than a hangover and an excess stock of canned goods. Goes to show, sometimes the anticipation of these events makes us do wackier stuff than the events themselves. Like with 2012, stocking up on beans, we get caught up in the fictional thrill ride, even though most of the time, the roller coaster is just in our heads.
Oh man, so this one time my buddy, total tech head by the way, he's like convinced his phone's gonna get hijacked by aliens during a meteor shower. He's got this whole elaborate shield made out of tin foil and wire hangers. And he's dead serious, right? So we're all hanging out watching the skies, and then his phone starts buzzing because an alarm went off or something. Dude nearly jumps out of his skin. We're all cracking up as he frantically checks for intergalactic bugs. Turns out his sister was just messing with him, set a bunch of alarms at peak meteor time. But for a second there, we all were caught up in it, clinging on to our beers like lifelines. Gotta say, it's those silly moments that stick with ya, making every starry mishap a story to laugh about later. Just like, everyone wrapping up their living rooms in aluminum foil for Y2K, only a little more low-budget, personal version, I guess?
Makes you wonder if aliens ever look down at us and think, these guys are hilarious. Pop some cosmic popcorn, Zorblat. It's human watching time again.
Right? It's like they've got their interstellar reality show subscriptions just for Earth season finales. Speaking of stuff from up there affecting us down here, have you seen the news about those intense solar flares lately? They're messing with satellites, which is kind of today's version of staring at blood moons and freaking out. We're not dressing our tech in tin foil yet, but it sure makes you think. Are we really all that different from our ancestors looking for omens in the sky? Our lives are pretty much run by these gadgets now, so when the sun hiccups and our signal goes fuzzy, it's chaos in the digital playground.
Simon, here's where I toss in a curveball. Back in the day, celestial events were like rowdy neighbors throwing a surprise party. No RSVP needed, just show up with your superstitions and wild guesses. Fast forward to now with these solar flares. I reckon we're in some ways still those partygoers, just with a tech upgrade. But look at how dependent we've become. GPS goes down, cell phones get scrambled. It's practically Armageddon for our Snapchat streaks. And while we're not trading in gold for comet pills, there are real talks about backups for satellite systems. I mean, solar flares could actually force us to hit pause on this digital binge-watching life. Yet, is it really chaos or just kind of a reality check? Sure, it's disruptive, but then we adapt, improve our tech shield, so to speak. It circles back to humans squaring up against nature's curveballs using brains over fear. At least that's the ideal scenario. And then comes the thinking, ain't this the purest form of human tradition? Panic first, ponder afterward. Even if the medium has changed from star signs to satellites, we're consistent in riding out these cosmic hiccups by clinging to whatever makeshift security blankie we can craft, even if it's digital.
Man, Joe, talk about a double-edged tech sword. Sitting ducks when the sun sneezes. Makes me fantasize about a solar flare so strong it fries everything, and we're all forced to relearn pigeon posting. Carrier pigeons with little USB sticks tied to their legs could be the next big thing.
Yeah. This reminds me, man, I once lost all signal due to a minor solar storm. Was trying to find this remote cabin for a weekend getaway. No map or GPS, just driving into the proverbial techless abyss. You ever seen someone try to use stars to navigate when they can barely find the Big Dipper? Let's just say it was a humbling reminder of how much we rely on these gadgets. And there I was, like reconnecting with ancient travelers using nature's cues, feeling this strange blend of nostalgia and frustration. So while we're joking about USB pigeons, and that's gold, let me tell you, when push comes to shove, it felt surprisingly good, rediscovering some old school human ingenuity. Sure makes you appreciate the skills our ancestors had, and maybe realize we shouldn't let those completely fade into the digital noise.
Now, imagine if we flipped it, had a no-tech day, every time there's a solar hiccup, like a forced step back to see how sharp our survival wits are without Google. We'd have people combing through old encyclopedias and reading maps like ancient scrolls.
I'd have to push back on that idea just a tad. No tech day? Sure, it sounds good in theory, like some romantic tech detox adventure. But when folks can't even navigate their own apartments without smacking into furniture after losing Wi-Fi, it makes you wonder how all this convenience has kind of dulled our basic skills. And, Simon, think about the chaos of no phones for a day. Businesses grinding to a halt, no quick internet search to win an argument with a friend or find a decent pizza place. There's this underlying tension between wanting the wonders of the digital age and, at times, almost fearing them. Like solar flares are nature reminding us it's still in charge, a celestial head check, if you will, even as we're streaming live from Mars or whatever. But the more interesting part is the societal reflex. We scatter to backup systems and low-tech solutions like they're lifeboats. It's not just a quirk, it becomes this unexpected reality check, forcing us outdoors, face-to-face with our analog ineptitude. So while USB Pigeon Day might give us laughs, it also shines a spotlight on how deep into the tech pool we've dived and maybe lost touch with the shore. Feels like a cosmic remember your roots nudge and makes for one hell of a narrative flip every time those solar flares flex.
Man, if we're not careful, the next big solar flash might just kickstart a modern renaissance. Everyone's suddenly a poet or painter because our screens went black.
Diving deeper into that, it's kind of like the universe forcing a cosmic reset button on us. When those screens go dark because of a solar storm, we confront a scenario where tech isn't king for a moment, and that's oddly refreshing in the digital age. It's important to note, too, how these events test our infrastructure's resilience, like they reveal vulnerabilities in our systems and push innovators to strengthen our satellites, communications, all that crucial stuff orbiting overhead. And if such a powerful solar event were to occur, aside from involuntary Renaissance Fair 2.0 happening worldwide, we're looking at potential widespread power outages, data losses. It gets serious fast. This forces us not just to unplug, but to rethink and innovate, kind of organically spurring progress in protecting our digital societies. So yeah, while we joke about resorting to paint and poetry, there's substantive growth behind the scenes. Each flare can be a lesson, pushing societies to evolve technologically, not just in what gadgets we create, but how we safeguard them against whatever space throws our way.
But hey, maybe it won't be all bad. Imagine all the new jobs, like solar flare-proofing technicians or space weather forecasters. Partly cloudy with a chance of tech blackout, they'll say.
Absolutely. The job market would, it'd adapt with the times just like it always does. For every problem, there's an opportunity. And it's funny how that's been a constant through history. And speaking of constants through history, it really puts me in mind of how these patterns echo back to our ancestors' days. Like take ancient farming, way before tech jobs were even a thought. People had to rely on celestial patterns to figure out when to sow their seeds. Not much different, conceptually, than modern-day techies predicting solar flares. These old civilizations didn't have weather apps or agriculture almanacs. They looked up at the stars. The Mayans, Egyptians, Babylonians, they all had sophisticated astrological calendars. They'd watch the sky, and it was like setting an alarm clock for planting crops. Today, we've got meteorologists and agricultural scientists who predict weather and best planting dates using high-tech equipment, which is cool, but doesn't carry quite the same romance as navigating by the cosmos, eh?
Man, Joe, I gotta say, that's fascinating stuff. Uh, I never would have thought about the connection between the stars and, old school farming. It's wild to think how folks back then could look up at the sky and be like, yup, time to get those seeds in the ground. Those Mayans and Egyptians, they had it all figured out with just star patterns, which is crazy impressive. No GPS, no fancy gadgets, just them, the Earth, and the cosmos. That's some deep connection to nature we're kind of missing now, huh? And the fact that these ancient calendars were key to their food supply? Man, it blows my mind. We definitely take for granted how easy we've got it with all our modern tech. They were rocking agriculture on a stellar level while we can barely remember to water houseplants without a reminder ping from our phones.
Really makes you wonder, right? If there was an app with star ratings for farming like back then, a cosmic farmer's almanac, how many of us would ditch the tech and trust the sky to run our veggie gardens? Might not be so bad to look up from our screens and get a little dirt under the fingernails.
Yeah, that's a real thought provoker. But here's the thing. Most of us can't even catch a constellation without an app, let alone decipher it for planting potatoes. And ditching tech? For a lot of folks, convincing them to swap out their smartphone for starlight is like trying to convince a fish to take up jogging. I mean, those ancient calendars are wicked cool, no doubt, but we've sort of lost that manual connection, haven't we? Like, we're so used to instant answers and, digital confirmations that trusting something as whimsical as the stars seems far out. And oh man, honestly, most gardens today would end up wild jungles because someone misread Orion's belt as time to harvest, not start planting. It's kind of mad to think about the level of in tune the ancients were compared to our current, Google-ass culture.
Dude, that's the crazy thing about civilization. We get more technologically advanced, but we lose some of those basic instincts, like planting by the stars. Back in the day, you had to really understand the environment. There was no outsourcing your survival skills to a smartphone. And now, we've got folks who can't even navigate their own neighborhood without Google Maps. It's nuts how disconnected we are from the natural world that sustained humanity for millennia. Makes you think we could benefit from a bit of a blend between the old school and the new school, huh?
Yeah, Joe, totally hear you there. So, this reminds me of a story. My grandpa used to have this old almanac, right? And every year he'd use it to plant his garden, swearing by the book. One year, I tried to show him this new gardening app. I was all tech smart, And he just chuckled, said nothing beats experience in Mother Nature's cues. Turned out his tomatoes were the talk of the town, while mine, following the app, they just flopped. Guess sometimes those old ways stick, 'cause they work. Makes you wonder if blending them with our new gadgets could create, I don't know, like a supercharged way of doing things. It's wild how much we rely on the past without even realizing it.
Oh man, that hits close to home, Simon. Like my uncle, total old school guy, he had this ritual. He'd plant his garden by the moon phases, said his dad did it, and his granddad before him. So I'm this curious kid with a new computer, thinking I've got all the answers, right? I try to convince him to use this gardening program. He looks at me, smiles, and says, "Son, sometimes the screen doesn't beat the sky." I shrugged it off until harvest came around and, well, let's say his yield made me eat more than just humble pie. And I learned something powerful there about respecting centuries of know-how intertwined with nature's rhythm. It's not just nostalgic, it's tried and true wisdom standing up to our digital era bravado. It's pretty eye-opening how much those deep-rooted practices still have value today, even if we don't always see it.
Yeah, Joe, it's wild how those traditional ways can still crush our modern shortcuts. Just kind of shows that some ancient wisdom never loses its sparkle, huh? Makes you want to grab a telescope and find out what other secrets the stars are hiding about the good old dirt under our feet, doesn't it?
Absolutely, that sparkle you're talking about. It's like it bridges our past and present. And it's not just about planting crops, it's almost mystical. Speaking of which, Simon, this talk about the stars and planting brings up something sort of along the same lines: the enchanting world of ancient rituals for crop fertility. These aren't your run-of-the-mill gardening tips, man. We're digging into the realm where astrology meets agriculture in a pretty serious dance. Like, imagine back in the day, planting under Saturn's watch because it ruled over endurance and time, or invoking Venus to bring that extra oomph of fertility to your fields. It's wild. Farmers didn't just turn to the skies for planning. They got deep into planetary potions, whipping up these rituals that were kind of a mix between prayer and practicality. Might sound like fantasy to us now, but some folks truly believed certain herbs planted at just the right astrological moment could result in bumper crops. Layer in some godly blessings, each deity with a hotline to certain planets, and suddenly you've got this cosmic cocktail of belief meets botany. Makes you realize these ancients weren't just agriculturalists. They were straight-up celestial strategists.
Joe, it's like they had this whole other connection to their crops, eh? This, special bond with the earth and stars. And, you gotta wonder, if we tried something similar today, would our kale grow any kalier? I mean, does Venus really have that kind of pull, or is it all just, I don't know, placebo effect with a side of mysticism?
Ah, Simon, here's where I'm going to veer off the mystic path a bit, man. Like these planetary rituals, heartwarming as they sound, probably aren't making that kale any crunchier. See, we got science now. It tells us about photosynthesis, soil composition, climate impact, all things that directly affect our crops. And sure, Venus looks pretty in the night sky, but its gravitational pull ain't doing much for plant growth here on Earth. What really does the trick is good old human care, proper watering, the right soil pH, keeping pests at bay, and giving plants the nutrients they need. When you boil it down, the success of these ancient practices was likely due to timing. Astrology was their best calendar. And while invoking gods doesn't change how tall your corn grows, such beliefs probably encouraged careful attention and dedication, which definitely do help the crops. So, there's practical wisdom woven into the ritual. It just might not be the mystical kind they thought it was.
Ah, but picture this, Joe. What if we're just scratching the surface? Like maybe those old gods were code for ancient agricultural hacks. Could you imagine planting with Poseidon as a legit strategy past civilizations kept hush-hush? Now that'd spice up your average day in the garden.
You're onto something wacky there, Simon. Imagine the ancient folks had some kind of secret agri-sauce they coded in mythology. But all right, let's sprinkle some more soil on this topic. So beyond just timing with the stars and planets, these ancients were keyed into lunar cycles. Seriously. They noticed that moisture levels in the soil would change depending on the moon's phase. Like, the new moon was for seeding because of higher groundwater levels, while the full moon was harvesting time. And check this out. Some civilizations use specific plant varieties associated with different deities or planets. A Venus plant might be tied to love and beauty, right? So it translated into hopes for a beautiful, flourishing crop. Also, take biodynamic farming. It draws from ideas that harken back to astrological agriculture, using cosmic rhythms to guide planting and fostering soil health. And hey, they buried cow horns filled with manure, a real nod to marrying mysticism with practicality. It wasn't just hoodoo. Somewhere in there, these practices meshed observation with spiritual faith. We might chuckle now, but really, they might have been tapping into instincts about ecology that we're now validating with environmental science. So, the past might have some legit lessons for today's growers if we read between the lines of lore.
Well, man, I can't help but think maybe they were onto something with that moon magic. Makes you kind of want to grab a spade and test it out during the next full moon, right? Just to see if your tomatoes turn out extraterrestrial.
Heh, yeah, it sure tempts you to experiment with that celestial green thumb. Our ancestors might give us a run for our money with their moonlit gardens. Could be worth a shot to prove or debunk the theory.
Joe, I'm kind of skeptical. Like, let's not get too starry-eyed, eh? These moon and planet rituals, they're charming and all, and sure, the ancients got results. But correlation isn't causation, right? So here's the rub. What if it was their stellar timing, but just because they were keen observers, not because Venus willed their carrots to be crunchier? We gotta question whether we're really seeing cosmic influence or just human patterns making sense of randomness. And that biodynamic stuff with cow horns? It's quirky for sure, but is it cosmic wisdom or just old Tom's secret compost recipe killing it with the crops? Man, I think our ancient famers might have been the original scientists after all, only without the fancy labs. Their results speak volumes, even if the reasons are less about planets and more about earthly practical know-how. You know?
Yeah, Simon, I hear you on the skepticism. It's one of those things, charming old world vibes with planting by the stars and all that jazz, but it probably was more about them being ace observers. Like when we dial it back to their successes, they're getting results not because of Venus or Mars, but because they really tuned into Earth's signals, seasonal cues, animal behaviors, and weather patterns. They were low-key environmentalists, making almanac notes before it was cool. So while we give a nod to biodynamics for sticking to tradition, it's also about optimizing what Mother Nature offers, with or without the help of planetary friends up in the cosmos. Really makes you consider the roots of these practices. They may just hold some value in their own earthy way.
So, this one time, I decided to grow some herbs, just a little project, you know? And my neighbor, this old timer named Frank, he comes by and starts talking about moon cycles. Like he's all into planting by the lunar calendar, saying his fam did it for generations. Me, being Mr. Modern, I just planted whenever. But Frank insisted, so I go along with it, kind of as a friendly challenge. We plant basil. It's simple, grows fast, and who doesn't like fresh basil, right? Long story short, we plant at new moon, and what do you know, that basil, it like explodes. It's lush, fragrant. I'm making pesto for weeks. Now, could be coincidence or maybe Frank's onto something. Those ancestral whispers, they might carry wisdom we just forget to listen to because we're so busy chasing the next shiny tech. Makes you appreciate those silent stars and moonlit nights a bit more, eh?
Man, your basil bonanza with Frank? That's wild. It could be ancestral whispers or strategic planting, but it does make you wonder. Maybe there's some lunar lift we're overlooking. Might be time to sync our watches with the moon phases, huh?
Absolutely, Joe. It's like the moon's our silent partner in the garden dance-a-thon. Speaking of which, you gotta love how those old almanacs tried to choreograph the whole shebang with their wacky predictions and advice. I stumbled upon one from way back when that said something like, when Jupiter aligns with Mars, turnips will grow as large as cars. Which is great if you're planning to open a turnip drive-through, right? Or how about this gem? They warned that planting peppers while Venus is in retrograde might make them so spicy they'll ignite passion or just burn your house down. Who knows? Man, those almanac authors must have had a field day coming up with that stuff.
Yeah, Simon, those almanacs, man, they were like the onion for farmers. Like this one time, I read an advice saying if Mercury's in retrograde, your chickens will start laying square eggs. Handy if you're into blocky omelets, right? Or get this, an old almanac claimed that a comet passing by meant cows would give chocolate milk. Imagine that. No need for Hershey's syrup anymore. It's funny how they slipped in humor with the horoscopes. Gotta hand it to 'em. Farming life is tough, so a little laugh between sowing and reaping was probably as welcome as rain in July.
All right, Joe, I mean those square eggs, total breakfast game changer, no rollaways. But come on, Mercury in retrograde causing that? Pretty sure Mercury's just the universe's scapegoat for, well, everything weird. And about those chocolate milk producing cows, wouldn't we all be ditching coffee shops to squeeze a cow at dawn? Hilarious as it is, these almanacs are like astrology's prank on farmers. It's comedy gold with a side of manure. Still, gotta admit, farming could use more laughs. Because when you're knee-deep in mud or fixing a tractor for the umpteenth time, it's gotta be either laugh or cry, right? So, maybe these nutty nuggets of farmyard fun were sprinkled in to keep spirits high. Or someone had way too many turnips the size of cars.
Yeah, Simon, gotta challenge this though. Square eggs and chocolate milk? It's funny until some poor farmers out there actually waiting for that cow's Hershey's squirt. But man, here's one. Sheep sheared during a lunar eclipse will grow cashmere wool. Could you imagine farmers in a frenzy, scissors in hand, waiting for that eclipse like it's Black Friday? These almanac authors, they were the original trolls of agriculture, taking something as routine as farming, sprinkling in zodiac signs like seasoning, and bam, you've got cosmic comedy. People cling to these absurdities because, hey, who wouldn't want magical chocolate milk or luxury sheep? But let's be real, almanacs probably led to more head-scratching than actual crop flourishing. They were entertainment masquerading as guidance, a bit of ridiculous respite for the toil.
Joe, you've hit the nail on the head. It's pure comedic genius when it comes down to the reality of farming life, right? Those almanacs spun a yarn better than any sheep could, cashmere or not. Historically, farmers relied on them for planting schedules, but that mix of fact and fiction, woo buddy, it was like their version of tuning into a sitcom after a long day. And seriously, those predictions and advice were based on centuries-old practices where astronomy met agriculture. They observed patterns, blended them with folklore, and turned out some pretty unique wisdom, or tomfoolery, depending on the page you landed on. Between laughs, though, these guides gave genuinely useful info. They timed harvests, predicted weather using rudimentary meteorology, even guided home remedies. They wouldn't outlast centuries if it was all square egg nonsense, eh? Yet, despite the chuckles, learning from the past had its perks. Trial and error shaped agricultural methods way before our modern systems could give us push notifications about when to water tomatoes. So let's take those laughable lemons and make some humor-infused lemonade while sticking to science for the serious stuff.
But here's a twist, Simon. If one of those quirky tips accidentally works out, I'm talking epic basil or the fluffiest sheep, imagine the following year's almanac. It would be like the farmer's guide to accidental agricultural wonders. All it takes is one cosmic coincidence, and we're rewriting the hoedown handbook.
Right you are, Joe. But imagine this. Next year's headline, Astro Farming Strikes Back, the Basil and Wool Revolution. It'd be the biggest agricultural plot twist since, cows started texting weather updates.
Onto the serious stuff, though. Ancient farmers with their astro-agriculture. I mean, there's a reason it stuck around for millennia. So, could those traditions sneak into modern farms? I don't know, maybe. There's value in tradition, but we can't ignore the advances in science. Today, our modern methods mix GPS tracking, planting, drones, and soil sampling like nobody's business. Sure, syncing plantings with lunar cycles might make for a good tale and, sometimes even results. But put it side by side with precise data analytics, it's David and Goliath. And sustainability, look, it's vital. Ancient peeps were all about harmony with nature, which is cool, but how do you scale that sustainably with 7 billion to feed? We're not just tilling small plots, we've got massive operations. I'm game for wisdom from the olden times, but meshing it with what's scientifically sound. That's the trick, right? All about finding what's legit helpful versus quaint nostalgia. No denying there might be something in those ancient rhythms worth hashing out through a modern lens. After all, reducing waste, following natural patterns, seems eco-smart. Astrology aside, ancient methods were attentive to Earth's rhythm, and that, honestly, might have some overlap with our current push for sustainable practices. Less about stars, more about the planet kind of deal. Worth considering? Maybe, but let's not swap tractors for horoscopes just yet.
Yeah, diving a bit deeper into that thought, Joe, like on the sustainability front, traditional agriculture was big on observing and adapting to natural cycles, right? That meant working with the land, not against it, keeping things diverse and rotated crops to maintain soil health. Nowadays, we call it regenerative farming. It's just good science, echoes the past, but has this fresh, research-backed rep, mimicking nature to reduce pests without chemicals, using less water. That stuff aligns with ancient practices, and, well, it makes modern sense, too. Ancient farmers, their patterns, they're like the early code for living off the grid, but within Earth's limits. Find those keystones in astroagriculture, strip away the mystical bits, and bam, you've got blueprints for eco-friendly farming today. It's not about trudging backward, it's cherry-picking those time-tasted tricks that vibe with current eco goals, you know? Like honoring the old tune, fine-tuning it with tech-savvy instruments. The cosmic part is poetic, sure, tantalizing even. Yet when practicality takes the stage, that's when we see real progress for a hungry planet.
Right, Simon, but let's stir the pot a bit. Imagine throwing some of those ancient astrological routines into cutting-edge AI-driven farms. Could create a fascinating hybrid, the cosmic meets quantum, past mashed with the future. It's one wild experiment.
Whoa there, Joe. AI with a side of star charts? That's like giving a robot a horoscope. Might just end up with the most confused corn ever, or super smart spuds plotting an uprising.
Haha, yeah, right. Robot farmers checking their horoscopes is way out there. But to stir that pot even more, let's not forget, AI is supposed to learn and adapt. So what if, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, incorporating those ancient calendar cues could potentially teach our machines about natural cycles we've overlooked? Like, say there is some hidden pattern or rhythm we're missing because we're all in on tech. Could be a wake-up call to the subtle stuff nature's been signaling all along. Now, I'm not advocating we ditch data for dowsing rods, but throwing an old-school wrench in the mix might, I don't know, highlight gaps in our approach, maybe? Sure, it sounds like a sci-fi subplot, the AI that tuned into astrological frequencies, but blending bit-driven farming with a dash of cosmic wisdom? Well, that might push us to reconsider what variables really matter in modern agriculture. It's one thing to track soil humidity and crop yields, but maybe, just maybe, there's some value in observing patterns we've cast off as folklore. We keep tight grips on our GPS gadgets and nutrient sensors, and sure, that's given us tons. Yet this wild idea that meaningful, sustainable methods could emerge from this fusion is like one of those so crazy it just might work things. Looking back through the telescope to see forward through the microscope, right? Wild concept. But heck, sometimes growth sprouts from the most unexpected seeds.
Yeah, Joe, blending ancient with AI. It's like teaching an old dog new tricks with a techie treat. And who knows, right? Nature's been playing this game way longer than we have. Could learn a thing or two.
That reminds me of my grandpa's orchard. You might say he was old-fashioned. He had this almanac, dog-eared and falling apart, swore by it, even when his smartphone could probably do more. So I'm like knee-high to a grasshopper back then. We're planting apple trees, right? He's there talking about moon phases, best planting times, real old-school stuff. But the thing is, those trees, they thrived. Might have been care, coincidence, but maybe some of that cosmic timing played a part. Now, I'm not saying Grandpa's approach was science. It wasn't. But was there something else at play? If nothing else, he showed me there's value in listening, to nature, to history, heck, even to tales as tall as the apple trees themselves. So while we hustle with hyper-tech farming, I guess taking a page from ancient calendars ain't the worst idea. Sometimes, slowing down adds just the right flavor to the mix, like tradition steeped into tech tea.
Heh, Grandpa's tech tea. Now there's a flavor Silicon Valley hasn't brewed yet. Let's not pour out the old wisdom with the bathwater just 'cause it doesn't have a USB port, right?
For sure, Simon. That's the thing. My grandpa, he wasn't about dismissing tech, just believed in a blend of worlds. There's this idea of phenology, watching natural events to predict plant behaviors, just like what he did. It's legit science that vibes with some old-school wisdom from those almanacs. And then there's biodynamic farming, an offshoot of thinking in cycles, reliant on moon phases and astrological positions. It's out there, but people swear by it for sustainability. And science shows us organisms do respond to their environment, including lunar cycles, seasonal changes. Might be onto something after all, right? It's like you take this ancient playbook, let tech interpret it into precise variables. We could up our eco-farming game without reinventing the wheel. Just because these ideas are old doesn't mean they're obsolete. Kind of like turning an antique locket into a smart locket. Keep its charm, upgrade its purpose. So yeah, there's wisdom in not letting go of traditions too fast. They might just be the ancestors of innovation.
Definitely, Joe. Mixing Grandpa's down-to-earth lore with some high-tech gloss might just unearth fresh routes for our eco journeys, or at least give us some food for thought. The Cosmos and Compost combo platter, served up 21st century style. Now, that'd be quite the sustainable feast to digest, wouldn't it?
You mentioned a sustainable feast, Simon. And speaking of feasts, Doesn't it make you wonder if even our taste buds are hitched to the stars? I've been reading up on how ancient cultures linked astrology with their chow, like how your zodiac sign could kind of dictate what's on your plate. Sounds odd at first, but history's peppered with this stuff. Astrological diets, man. They'd feast on foods linked to their signs ruling planets. Take the Greeks and Romans. They were all about that celestial seasoning when planning their banquets. And in some parts of the world, people still cook using recipes that are supposed to align with the heavens. So, does Sagittarius season call for different spices than Pisces? I can hear the horoscope now. Virgos, add more kale for balance. It's out there, but hey, maybe your star sign says more about your spice rack than we think.
All right, look, Joe. Tune in to any morning show and sure, you'll catch them dishing out these zodiac sign diet tips. But let's chew on the other side of that sandwich for a sec. Scientifically, there's like zero proof that the stars tweak our taste buds. I mean, nutrition is complex. Genes, culture, environment, they play a massive part in our diets. And then there's allergies, personal preferences, all that jazz. Plus, think about it. Hundreds of millions share one zodiac sign. The idea that they'd all dig the same flavors is kinda, well, bland. You know what I mean? Ancient folks, they clung to astrology because they had less info about the world. It's romantic and quirky, but lining up your lunch with the cosmos today just doesn't fry up right on the reality stove. It's a fun spice to sprinkle on top, but not the meat and potatoes of dietary science.
Imagine a restaurant based on that. Your astrological diner, where Capricorns get served capers and corn, and the only steaks Tauruses can order are rare. What's your sign? Because here we take you are what you eat to a star-studded level.
Joe, the whole star sign diner plan sounds like a hoot and a half, for sure. But imagine being the Gemini who hates variety or the Scorpio craving sweets instead of spice. It's written in the stars, more like scribbled in the margins. And here's why sticking to pure science tastes better. Food choices are deeply personal. They're about biology, culture, even psychology, not so much our planetary alignments. You can't just blanket cater to an Aquarius or Leo. It's not one flavor fits all. Nutritional sciences, they've boiled it down to gut health, metabolic rates, all that real-world stuff. Astrology is fun for a chat over coffee maybe, but flavor profiles and nutrient needs, that menu's got to be tailored by the person, not their Pisces sun sign.
Yeah, exactly right, Simon. I mean, connecting dots between star signs and snack times. It's like sprinkling fairy dust on your fries and expecting magic. Fun idea for some, but it doesn't deliver that nutritional punch we all need. But hey, to be fair, traditional astrologers weren't just staring at the stars with empty bellies. They had reasons for their rhymes, like temperament theories linked to bodily fluids. Back in the day, meals based on zodiac signs were about balancing those humors, not just a faded flavor kick. Yet nowadays, we've got science serving up a personalized meal plan based off hard evidence. So while the zodiac spiel is neat for novelty, when it comes down to it, a bio-individual approach to grub, now that's cooking with gas. We're complex organisms. Our diets need more than just a pinch of cosmic salt to hit the health spot.
Yeah, Joe, to circle back a bit for clarity, when we're bantering about the whole astrological palette thing, it's infectious to think our dinner picks could be sketched in the heavens. But like historical astrology and food, it was more, metaphorical. Ancient guys saw the body as its own universe, needing balance like the cosmos above. They didn't have all the nutritional deets we do now, so zodiac signs were a framework, right? Not recipes, but more like a philosophical cookbook. Even if it's tasty to toy with these theories, a Cancer craves comfort food while Leos are all fiery with the hot sauces, the truth's more grounded. I mean, sure, your sign might say fish for Pisces, but what if you're allergic to seafood? Boom, theory sunk. So, diving deep into behavioral astrology, it's charming, rich history there, but at the end of the day, sandwiches don't align with Saturn, and the moon isn't monitoring your munchies. Our grub's got to sync with personal health profiles, not our astro-prescribed snack horoscopes.
I'll bite. Maybe we'd have less food fights if world leaders shared a sign-specific snack bar at the UN. Like a cosmic cafeteria, huh? Imagine that summit.
Haha, a cosmic cafeteria. Sure, Mars bars for Aries and Taurus gets the bull-shaped burgers. But let's not slip into thinking shared star sign snacks are the key to kumbaya. I'd hate to see what happens when Mercury's in retrograde. Would all the meals just go wrong? Food ties deep to culture, politics, personal beliefs, not your astrological profile. So while it's a quirky concept, blending astrology with biology is like trying to mix oil with water? Doesn't quite mesh. Leaders chomping down on zodiac-themed grub might make a fun photo op. But at those big tables where decisions are made, we're likely better served with diplomacy over desserts linked to our birth stars. I mean, understanding and mutual respect pack more punch than Pisces-picked pastries or Scorpio-themed salads, right?
Absolutely, Simon. The moment we start saying, hey, your negotiation skills seem off, what's your sign? That's the day peace talks turn into pie throwing. But still, imagine the headlines. World peace planets, leaders lunch horoscopes. Would be a heck of a story, right? Just picture it. Full moon and full plates would sure make international summits more flavorful. But seriously, we're meat and potatoes creatures when it comes down to it, needing substance over stars in our servings. And history aside, today's dinner debates are better suited for the science journal than the astro column. Because like they say, you can't run the world on an empty stomach, especially if you're just munching on mystical morsels.
Yeah, Joe. So this reminds me of the time back in college when we all took those online quizzes for fun, right? You know, find your spirit snack based on your sign. And mine came out as sushi. I mean, I like sushi and all, but my buddy, total carnivore, gets carrot sticks because he's a Virgo. The look on his face, it was like someone swiped his steak. It got us thinking, like, is there really something to it? But by dinner, we'd gone full rebellion against the stars, just grilling up what we craved, constellation-free. So yeah, while it's entertaining to connect dots from our signs to dining style, when push comes to plate, it's more about what you're in the mood for than Mercury's moves. Makes you think, are these tastes written in the sky or just a fun fortune cookie-style fate? Tag along.
Right, just goes to show that our palates probably have more to do with personal cravings than planetary positions. It's all in good fun till someone gets saddled with celery when they're dreaming of a cheeseburger.
Joe, remember that whole spirit snack thing? Let's riff off that a bit more. Take Aries. They're a fire sign. Spunky, right? They'd probably want something zesty, packing heat. We're talking spicy tacos or a curry that fights back with flavor. But slide over to Libra, air sign, huh? They go for balance, collaboration. So their plates might look like a well-dressed salad waiting to negotiate your taste buds into zen. And maybe some culturally refined stuff like uh, delicate French pastries. It's like each sign's got its foodie destiny all mapped out. Fire versus air, zest versus zest, tiffle harmony. The horoscope haute cuisine could be wild.
Fiery Aries and their bring-it-on attitude towards food. We're talking a love affair with bold flavors. They probably chomp into jalapenos like they're apple slices, right? But then Libra, elegant, airy Libra, known for craving harmony and equilibrium, probably means no dish too extreme. Maybe some perfectly balanced sushi? Still, doesn't this box them in a bit? I mean, last time I checked, not all Aries are flipping the Scoville scale, and I've seen plenty of Libras double dipping in the hot sauce. And yeah, there's cultural nuances. We could say Aries dig into a smoky Texas barbecue while Libras lean into an intricate Italian antipasto. But these flavor destinies, kind of like escape rooms, they're fun to explore, but do they really lock down how we eat? I'd wager that when Aries meets a salad or Libra faces fiery wings, those stars might just, dare I say, misalign.
So, this one time, I went out with a couple of friends for dinner. This was way before any of us got into the whole astrology game. Now, my buddy, he's an Aries, right? And there's me. I'm Libra through and through. We're at this smokin' barbecue place, smoke billowing like we'd stepped onto a grill. And my Aries friend, he dives straight for the hottest wings on the menu. I figure, hey, he's living up to that fiery rep. But me, I'm scanning for something mild, balanced. Give me a dish where no flavor overpowers another, you know? So, we're chatting, eating, and here's the kicker. My Aries pal, his face is turning as red as those darn wings. Turns out he can't handle the heat too well, and yeah, he starts sweating buckets. Meanwhile, I'm completely zen with my choice, a perfectly leveled sweet and smoky pulled pork sandwich. It's hilarious because it flips the script entirely, right? Like maybe sometimes the stars get it a bit mixed up. Or heck, maybe we just feel like playing against type now and then. Shows you how everyone's tastes are more complex than what their sun sign dishes out.
Plot twist. Maybe it's not about the stars at all, but just rolling with what your gut says at that moment. Even Aries might crave a Libra's lunch, and vice versa. Add some savory unpredictability to the mix.
All right, check this. Imagine an Aries walks into a sushi bar with a Libra. Aries says, "Hit me with that dragon roll, extra wasabi," as if the waiter's a tattoo artist and their mouths looking to get inked. And the Libra's weighing options, like they're choosing a rescue puppy, goes, "I'll have the California roll, but can you make sure the crab and avocado are seeing a couples therapist first?" Maybe we're all just trying to order from life's menu without blaming it on the Zodiac kitchen, huh?
Haha, pretty much, Simon. Like the Aries Libra dinner date at a sushi bar is a full-on culinary clash of the titans. They turn ordering into an Olympic sport. You've got Aries gunning for gold in spicy sprints, while Libras are balancing every choice on a diplomat scale. But really, maybe the Aries is just riding a heat wave whim, and the Libra's call for a diplomatic dish might just be them wanting a safe bet, like avoiding a food faux pas. Everyone's trying to hit those taste bud targets, whether they're star-aligned or simply craving conquistadors, charting their stomach seas that night. It's like our meal's fate. Who knows if it's written in the stars or scribbled on a napkin?
So, about this Aries and Libra Chow showdown. It's like everyone expects Aries to bulldoze their way through a buffet as if it's an extreme sport, right? Charging at their grub like a bull, ram. But here's the thing. What if said Aries just isn't feeling the heat that day? Maybe they woke up on the Zen side of the bed, wanting something more Libra-esque. Picture it, an Aries ordering gasp cream-based pasta. Rebels without a culinary cause. Switch over to Libra's side. Like, what if they're tired of the scales? What if they want to rock the boat with a dish that's throwing punches like Rocky? Yo, Adrian, pass me that ghost pepper salsa. Could you imagine? It seems everyone's so hooked on horoscope menus like they're written in stone or baked into the stars. But let's not kid ourselves. Culinary destinies? More like foodie free will, spiced up with a dash of celestial suggestion. Just spritzes of stardust on our supper. It ain't the whole meal ticket.
Yeah, picture this. Mr. Aries puts down the chilies and reaches for a quiche. And there's Madame Libra chomping on a ghost pepper taco like it owes her money. The stars probably didn't see that plot twist coming. So maybe we, lean on the celestial menu a bit much. Hey, horoscopes. If I wanted my destiny decided, I'd buy a magic 8-ball for dinner advice. But really, taste buds, they're way too wild to get wrangled by your zodiac sign.
Right? It's like stars got its own horoscope, separate from what the stars are jabbering about. Have you ever picked up a menu and felt like your sign was nudging you to order something specific? Or is it more like every man for himself once you're hangry?
Well, Aries folk being fiery and all, tradition suggests they'd gravitate towards food that gets the adrenaline pumping. Think protein-loaded meals. But then those same attributes signal they like fast, on-the-go eating too. Quick fix snacks to match their high-tempo lives. Talking Libras? They vibe with the beautiful, the aesthetic. It's about a culinary canvas, foods paired in harmony. Little-known fun fact, classical composers might have been Libras at heart with how they crafted symphonies, a gastronomical balance of flavors on their plates. But here's the kick. There's no rule book for this in the kitchen or life. For every guideline about astrological appetites, there's a rebel taking a sledgehammer to it. By design, people are spicy, a pinch unpredictable, a dash dynamic. Zodiac signs, well, that's just one ingredient in our complex stew of character.
Totally, man. Aries with their go-go-go might grab a burger to wolf down, but sometimes they'll sit for sushi, savoring the art of it all. And those Libras? Yeah, their plates look like paintings, but they can totally surprise you and crush a burrito on a park bench. Fact is, we're talking guidelines, not rules set in some cosmic kitchen cookbook. So, listeners out there vibing with Aries or Libra, or anything in between, what's your wild card meal that throw the stars for a loop?
Speaking of cosmic curveballs, let's chew on this. Mercury retrograde munchies. You ever notice when Mercury's in retrograde, everything goes haywire? Even your cravings get wacky. Last retrograde, I was all over the place. Wanted pickles on peanut butter on like Tuesday, and then fish tacos with extra lime by Thursday. There's got to be a science fiction show out there where aliens mess with human food behavior through planetary alignments. Listeners, what's your most bizarre craving during Mercury retrograde? And no, Simon's pesto ice cream phase doesn't count. Or does it?
So there was this one time, right? Picture this. It's Mercury retrograde season. I don't usually buy into all that stuff, but my world was upside down. I'm at home, getting ready to dive into my usual Thursday night ritual, the classic movie marathon with the good old popcorn. Then, out of nowhere, get this, I'm ransacking the pantry like a squirrel before winter hits. I lay my eyes on marshmallows and crackers. Next thing you know, I'm roasting s'mores over the stove, feeling like some kind of indoor camper. It's madness. And, it hits me. Maybe it's that Mercury mischief making my snack game go bonkers. Come to think of it, Mercury must have been having a field day with everyone's taste buds then. It's like you're just minding your business, and bam, your food cravings are suddenly flipping through more channels than a bored retiree with a new TV remote.
Yeah, well, Mercury might be throwing wrenches in the works, but think about it. Stuck on s'mores? Probably more nostalgia than cosmic chaos. And hey, you mentioned indoor camping, right? How often does anyone really do that without, like, planets pushing? What if we did an experiment next retrograde? Keep a snack journal, track our cravings compared to normal, and put this astrology appetite theory to the test. Could just be stress snacking. Or maybe there's something twinkling in those starry guidelines after all. And listeners, any of you buy into Mercury's snack attacks? Do your cheese cravings spike when the planets backtrack? Let's dive deep here. Got any retrograde recipes to pass the cosmic craziness?
That's not a bad idea with the snack journal thing, because it feels like Mercury's just back there pulling pranks on us, right? Getting a kick out of knocking our food vibes all silly. But a journal could really show if it's all in our heads, or if the cosmos actually toss us into a culinary spin cycle every now and then. Hey, so aside from the s'mores debacle, got any particular munchy moments you remember when Mercury was being a mischief maker?
Mercury retrograde has a notorious rep for communication snafus, technology meltdowns, and just general life disarray. Now, there isn't scientific evidence directly linking our dietary desires to the movements of planets. Astrology isn't recognized as science per se. But this doesn't stop believers from noting shifts in their cravings or general behavior. In astrology, Mercury is the planet of communication, so when it goes retrograde, appearing to move backwards in the sky, it's believed that things related to communication might also go backwards. However, these effects are subjective and vary widely among individuals. Human behavior is complex. We're swayed by environment, mood, psychology, and yes, maybe even by our beliefs about the stars. Thus, some folks might subconsciously turn to comfort foods, childhood treats, or odd food combos during such periods. The idea then isn't that the stars toss us into a culinary cyclone, but perhaps that the stress or confusion attributed to Mercury retrograde leads to seeking reassurance through food, a universal human response. That's where your s'mores might come into play. And to engage our listeners, have you noticed any trends in your eating habits during Mercury retrograde? Let's see if we can spot patterns or debunk myths together.
Thinking about that, what if it's like those retro toys everybody loved as a kid? Mercury hits the reverse, and our taste buds want to play with the same old toys too. Suddenly, you're 5 years old, smearing chocolate on everything in sight. It's like cosmic comfort food time travel.
Yeah, haha, it's kind of wild. Reminds me of this one time during retrograde. I was supposed to be on this strict meal plan, right? Very structured. But that week, out of nowhere, I'm craving these foods from my childhood. Like there I am, a grown man, rummaging through my kitchen at midnight for stuff to make a peanut butter and banana sandwich. Total Elvis style. I felt like a kid again. It's as if Mercury flicked on some nostalgia switch and suddenly, bam, all those diet rules flew right out the window. And then there's this weird thing. I was way more creative with my work while munching on those nostalgic snacks. Not sure if it's related, but kind of makes you wonder about those cosmic influences, doesn't it? Like maybe there's a method to the madness.
I mean, seriously, if a peanut butter and banana sandwich can transform a strict diet into a retro adventure, what's next? Will a bowl of cereal have me cracking the secrets of the universe, or at least my neighbor's Wi-Fi password? Mercury retrograde, messing with Wi-Fi and snack vibes.
You know, it's funny. We're joking about Mercury messing with our snack game, but it actually brings up a bigger feast for thought. I mean, should we even let the stars have a say in what ends up on our plates? Dudes follow diets from keto to intermittent fasting without any cosmic input, right? So, is lining up your lunch menu with your zodiac any different? It's an interesting question. Does astrological advice boost our self-awareness, or are we boxing in our choices? We might actually be handing over control of our forks to something that's not even science-based. Anyway, thinking about it, from personal choice to psychological effect, is believing in these cosmic connections just comfort food for the soul, or does it truly spice up our well-being? Worth chomping down on the idea.
Look, I get it. Some folks dig the whole astrology buffet, thinking it's like a secret sauce to life. But handing over your grocery list to the stars? Really? I mean, where's the personal choice in that? If you're only munching kale because Saturn's doing a jig, might as well say my dog picks my outfits. It's kinda out there, man. And sure, it could make you feel tuned in to the cosmos or whatever, but couldn't it also just mess with your head, making you think you want things that actually have zilch to do with your real cravings or needs? We're talking food here, not fortune-telling. Aurelia eats vegan during Venus phases and swears she's on cloud 9. It's like, are you following the planets or just jumping on a space-themed bandwagon? Life's about choices, right? So is letting astrology run the mealtime show really making us more self-aware, or does it, like, nuke our free will in the microwave of mysticism? It's a brain snack, for sure.
Exactly. Look, if you're truly feeling the cosmic vibes in your dining decisions, okay, cool. But let's not forget to sprinkle some critical thinking on whatever we're serving up. Makes life more interesting, keeps us guessing what's truly steering the ship, the stars above or the gut instinct below.
Whoa, time flew by like a UFO on a rush to Area 51. Big thanks to all you awesome listeners for tuning in and letting us invade your brain space with our cosmic snack talk. You gotta come back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. More laughs, more debates, and whatever else the universe throws onto our plate. Stay cool and keep snacking, just maybe not by starlight, eh? Catch ya on the flip side.